Hello, creative and crafty people. I hope y'all are doing well today. It's been icy cold here in Texas, which is not super common for this time of year, so I'm bundled up in some warm, toasty clothing and have a cup of homemade hot chocolate. So while I'm sipping on my warm drink, I'll be showing you how I created these sparkly, fun holly and berry earrings. These earrings are made of both copper wire and resin. You could just as easily make these earrings with just wire and the beaded berries, and these would still be super cute. But for that added color and sparkle, you can add a bit of resin to your piece and it will give it a bit more charm. A little disclaimer up front, I'm not sponsored by any of the products in this video. I just like the particular products I use. So as we get ready to create these earrings, remember, this is your creation and you get to create it the way you like. Each piece of jewelry is unique just like us. We are all unique and created beautifully. If you'd like to learn how I created these fun earrings, then stick around and let's get creating. Materials for this project are as follows. We'll need one piece of 18 gauge wire cut at 10 centimeters in length. We'll need two pieces of 20 gauge wire cut at 10 centimeters in length. We'll need two pieces of 20 gauge wire cut at 4.5 centimeters. And we'll need four pieces of 20 gauge cut at 3 centimeters. We're also going to need some 4mm red bicone crystal beads, or whichever type of red beads you might have. We'll need some chain nose pliers, some bent chain nose pliers, looping pliers, flush cutters, a chasing hammer, a bench block, a cup burr, and a file. If you don't have a cup burr, you can just use a file. We'll need some UV resin. I'm using the Let's Resin brand, but you can use whichever type you have. You'll need some type of colorant. I'm using Let's Resin Chrome Powder in green. You'll need a stirring tool, an applicator. I'm using this nail tool. You'll also need some resin tape or packing tape, a pair of scissors, a mini torch or a stick lighter to pop bubbles, and a UV lamp. I'm using JDiction's, but you can use whatever type of UV lamp you have. Also not included in this video, but you'll need some type of cup to mix your resin in. If you didn't catch or you missed something in this materials list, you can either go back and rewatch this part of the video, or you can check out the materials list in the description down below. Now let's get started on this project. To get started, we're going to grab our 20 gauge wire cut at 10 centimeters in length and a pair of looping pliers. And with the 2mm mandrel on the looping pliers, we're going to grab the very end of both of these 20 gauge wires and create a loop at the end of our wires. So we're just going to wrap that wire all the way around the mandrel and bring it all the way around till the end of the wire comes back and touches itself, creating a little loop. Then we're going to pull this off of the pliers and grab the inside of that loop with our chain nose pliers, and we're just going to create a slight little bend at the top part of this wire right under that loop. And then grabbing it about 1 centimeter down, we're going to create a sharp bend back in toward the center of our piece. And then grabbing to the outside of that new angle, we're going to make a nice curved bend back out to the outside. And then again, about 1 centimeter from the inside of the curve, we're going to make another sharp bend. Then we're going to grab at the other side of this sharp bend and make a nice soft curve pointing straight down from the loop. Now about maybe 7 millimeters from that point, we're going to bend this wire all the way back up toward the loop, like so. And then grabbing inside of that last little bend, we're going to grab the tail ends of these wires and bend them back toward the right side of our piece, creating a soft curve. And then about 7 millimeters from the point of that bend, we're going to bend this back in. So we're going to make a little angle back toward the center of our piece again. We're just going to mirror the other side of our leaf here. Now we're going to go back to that soft curve. Just bend it around. And then we're going to grab right up above that last sharp bend we just made and bend that back toward the center of our piece once again. Try to line it up with the other point across the way, and then a nice soft curve bend up toward the loop. And now I'm just kind of pulling the piece apart, widening the center there a little bit, and then just lining that top up with the other side of that loop so that everything lines up nicely. And we want these to mirror each other, so I'm going to flip that piece over and flip that wire over the top so that these are perfect mirror images. And now we're going to grab the flush cutters and we're going to cut the tail end of this wire off at the top of our leaf. And we want to cut it right where those two wires intersect each other. You want to flush cut that. And we want this wire to lay right up against the other wire. And right here, it's a little bit on top still. So I'm going to cut off just a little bit more. And nope, just a little bit more. And there we go. And now that lines up nicely with that top loop. And now we're going to do the same thing for this other one, which I'll do off camera. And here they are, the two holly leaves, ready to go for our next part. So grabbing the bench block, I'm going to place one of my earrings on the bench block, and then I'm just going to hammer this whole piece flat. Flip it over to the other side and get a nice little shine on that edge. And there I've done both pieces. And now with the leftover cutoffs from our pieces, I'm going to put those in the top part of that holly leaf, right in that point. And then with my flush cutters, I'm going to go ahead and cut off the tail end of these right where the point is on these. Maybe about 2 millimeters up from the bottom. And now with these two pieces, we're going to create a slight S curve, a very slight S curve. And I'm doing both at the same time so that they'll be very similar with each other. If they're not perfect, that's okay, as long as we get them pretty close. And there's that slight S curve I've got going. And now I'm going to do the same thing and hammer both of these pieces nice and flat, not super flat, just a few taps. You just want to have a flat side so when you pour your resin, the resin's not going to go underneath that curved wire. It'll be flat on one side. So there you can see both my pieces have been flattened. And now this is what I want it to look like with that little line in there. And so now we're going to grab the resin tape and cut off a piece, which I've already done here. And we're going to stick our leaves onto the sticky side of our resin tape. And just press it down there and make sure you burnish these pieces on. Also make sure your pieces are mirrored to each other. And then I'm going to fold over the ends here because my tape likes to curl up. So this is one way to combat that curling is I fold in the little edges. and then it just stays nice and flat for me. And there you can see I've got those leaves on that tape. And now I'm going to add my little center wire. I'm going to put the top part right up into that point as tight as possible. And then I'm going to line up the rest of this center vein down the center of my leaf. And then we're going to burnish that little line down onto the tape to make sure it's on there nice and tight and snug. We're going to do the same thing with this other piece of wire. Create our center vein of the leaf. And there are both the leaves done and burnished onto the tape. And now we're going to add our resin. So first I'm going to tape my resin tape down to this little plastic shelf that comes with my UV lamp. And this you don't have to do. I'm doing it because I want to be able to show you guys up closer than what it is on the table there. So this way I can pick it up and move it around and it's not going to slide off that shelf on me. And now I'm going to grab my UV resin in that silicone cup and my UV colorant, or my, not UV colorant, my Let's Resin chrome powder colorant. And look how sparkly that is. We're just going to grab a very small amount of this, and you could see how much I'm grabbing there. It's not too much. And I've already gone ahead and mixed some of this up in another project, so I'm not going to show you how I do that. But this is the amount of resin I'm using, and you just dump in that little amount I showed you, and then mix it well. And now with my applicator, I'm going to grab a little amount on the tip of my applicator here, not too much. And we're just going to start applying it inside of these leaves. The object is to try to keep it inside the wire. Don't get any of that resin on top of the wire, because that will show in your final piece. You want it to stay inside of that wire. And I'm going to do both pieces like this. And I've sped it up so you don't get bored watching me fill these little resin leaves. There's one just about filled up. And when I say filled up, it's a very thin layer to start with. You don't want to do too much because that way the UV light will be able to cure it if it's thinner. If you do too much at a time with that chrome powder in there, it's not going to cure as well. So now I'm putting it under my UV lamp for 60 seconds. And now the 60 seconds is up. I'm going to pull that out. And I'm going to add a second coat, just the same way we did the first coat. And this time we're going to fill that up almost level to the top of those wires. And there you can see I've used up all that resin. And now we're going to make sure we use that mini torch or a stick lighter to pop any bubbles. I forgot to show you that the first time, but you do need to do that. And there you can see those are ready to go in to the UV lamp for another 60 seconds. And now once that is done, we're going to pull it back out. And there you can see it's nice and cured. We're going to grab our UV resin and we're going to put 2 coats of clear resin on top. So here I'm going to start with a drop at the top part of the leaf and a drop at the bottom part, and then I draw a little bit up. And that's about all I need. And then I'm going to make sure I draw the resin all the way to the edge of the leaves. I've sped this up as well. And then I'm going to blow out any of those bubbles with my mini torch. Place it back into the UV lamp for 60 seconds. And now I'm going to pull that back out, and you can see I've got that first coat domed on there, but I'm going to go ahead and add a second coat just to make sure we got a nice rigid top. And then it comes over the top of that wire. This is important because you don't want that resin to pop out of the inside of that piece. So bringing it over the edges just gives it that little lip over the top to kind of hold on to the edges. And there's the second one done, the second coat. We're going to torch it to get rid of any bubbles, stick it back in the UV lamp, and this time, since that's my second and final coat, I'm going to cure this for 5 minutes or 300 seconds, just to give it a nice, good cure on that side before I handle it. Now, the next step I failed to show, I lost my video footage, but I take this out of the UV lamp and I pulled the tape off of the back of them. And then I did go ahead and I started my second coat on the back side. So on the back side, I went ahead and put 2 coats of the UV resin, just like I did the front side. And there you can see it's complete. Again, curing with 5 minutes of time once you finish that side. Now we're going to grab the 4 pieces of wire that we cut at 3 centimeters in length. And at the same time, I'm going to grab my bench block and a hammer. And I'm going to hammer all 4 of these wires at the very end to kind of give them a little paddle at the end of this wire. And there you can see that paddling effect I have there. And on the other end of those wires, we're going to place our bicone beads. And what that paddle does is it prevents the bead from coming off the other end of the wire. So that way they have a place to sit and they'll stay right in place. Now you can have as much of the wire sticking out as you want. I just like to leave about 1 millimeter to 2 millimeters at the end of my wires. So where you've hammered the end of this wire and has created that little paddle, it's a little bit sharp on the edges. So we're just going to file those little edges to round them off and smooth that out. So we have nothing pokey or sharp to grab on anything or to cut anyone. And there you can see it's nice and rounded now. So now off camera, I went ahead and did all 4 of those and got them nice and rounded and not so sharp. Now we're going to take this wire, we're going to bend it at about a 90-degree angle with the flat side facing you. So we're going to bend it to the right with that flat side of that paddle facing you. And with our flush cutters, we're going to cut at about 1 centimeter from the top of the bead and leave about 1 centimeter in length. And with our 2 millimeter mandrel, we're going to grab the end of this wire and create a loop. So I'm going to roll my pliers in toward the top of my bead until that wire comes all the way back around and touches itself. And there you can see I've created that loop. And there's the finished one. And now for the second one, it's going to be a little bit different than that first one. So I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers and grab at the top of this bead, grab the wire at the top of the bead, and then make my 90-degree angle. I want a little space at the top of that wire. This way it makes this one a little bit longer than the first one. Again, cutting about 1 centimeter of length from that bend we just made. And then grab the looping pliers, and with that 2 millimeter mandrel, we're going to create a loop. Again, rolling the pliers back in toward the top of the bead or toward that angle until that wire comes all the way back and touches itself. And there you can see I've got 2 of the longer length ones with that space above the bead and 2 that are flush. The loops are flush at the top of the beads. So now I'm going to pair them off, one longer one and shorter one with one earring and the other set with the other earring. Now we're going to grab our 18 gauge wire cut at 10 centimeters. And we're going to create a couple of jump rings using our 3mm mandrel. So grabbing the end of that wire, we're going to wrap the wire around that mandrel. We're going to go all the way past the beginning of that first loop and keep going. The goal is making 2 jump rings. I tend to like to make more than the 2 in case I cut one wrong. Also, just to have some on hand available for other projects. So here I'm going to flush cut the end of these jump rings. Where that wire stops, almost stops the curve, we're going to cut that flush. And I use the flush cut side, the flush side of the flush cutters for that side. And then I'm going to flip it over and flush cut the other side of this jump ring. If you don't flip it over, you're going to end up with a little point on one of the ends of your jump ring. So there you can see there's 2 flush cuts that will be able to meet up with each other in this ring. And you need to do a second one. And I did that off camera. And now I'm going to grab the jump ring with my chain nose plier and bent chain nose pliers. And then I'm going to twist this jump ring like this, away from each other. The ends of those are going to go away from each other, not out away from each other, but twisted just out to the side. And then we're going to grab the longer length of our bead element and then the shorter length and pop those onto the jump ring. And then we're going to twist this jump ring back closed. And twisting that jump ring is great because it will help to work harden that jump ring as well. So there you can see one is just slightly longer than the other. And I've already done the other one off camera. And now we're grabbing our 4.5cm wire that's 20 gauge. And with our 2mm mandrel on the looping pliers, we're going to create a loop at the end of this wire, bringing that tail end of the wire back to meet with itself. Now we're going to grab those off of the looping pliers. We're going to place those loops over the 7mm mandrel so that the loops go over the top of those 7mm mandrel, and then pull our wire ends around the 9mm mandrel until the ends of those wires come about 5mm from the loops that are there. And there you can see we've got our ear wires formed. And now keeping those ear wires together, we're going to grab the chain nose pliers and about 2mm from the end of these ear wires, we're going to give them a little bend outward, just a slight bend. So now we just need to grab our bench block and our chasing hammer, and we're going to hammer the outside edges of these ear wires just to give them a little bit of shine and flare. It will also help work harden that part of the ear wire. And we just hammer those. I also use a nylon hammer, which I did not show, to harden the rest of these ear wires. But there is that little shine I was talking about. So the outside edge of this is flattened a little bit. It just gives a nice little touch to them. You don't have to do that part. I just enjoy doing that. And then with my cup burr, I'm going to place it over the end of this ear wire and just get the burr off the end of this wire and make it nice and smooth and rounded. You could do this with a file, a nail file, a piece of sandpaper, whatever you've got on hand. That will work. Just as long as you get those sharp edges off. Nobody wants their ears to be bleeding from the sharp edge of that metal. And now we're going to grab our chain nose pliers and we're going to bend this loop out to the side on our ear wire, not forward to the front, but to the side. We don't want to misshape our loop. Grab that earring charm, make sure we place it on the loop with the front side facing forward. And then we're going to grab these little berries that we put on jump rings. And we're going to pop that little jump ring onto this ear wire loop. We're just going to hook that little jump ring and set that on there. And notice we've got the right side is the longer bead. So when you do the second one, you need to make sure you put the longer bead on the left side so it's mirroring. And there you can see that completed earring. Isn't that cute? And here are both of them complete. I just think they're so sparkly and fun. And here I've done a pendant. I've added an extra point, but you could easily do this. It's exactly the same way. You just add an extra point on your leaf and you make your little center vein a little bit longer. And there you can have a pendant to match your earrings. I hope y'all enjoyed watching this video. Let me know in the comments below what you thought. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up. This just lets YouTube know that you enjoyed my content, and in turn, YouTube will push these videos out to even more creative people like yourself. Also, another way to help me and get this video out to more people is to hype this video down below. If you haven't already and you'd like to see more of my tutorials, then click that subscribe button. It's free, and by subscribing to my channel, you can be notified when a new tutorial is up for you to view. Thank you guys for your continued support. I sure do appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next Thursday.